Hello, everybody. Welcome to Matrix Live Season 5 episode. We have no idea and haven't had time to check, but it is a very exciting Matrix Live indeed because we are joined by Eric. Hello, Eric.
Hello.
Do you want to go by Eric or Mad Little Mods, as many people on the
Definitely,
internet might know you?
definitely Eric, but that's
Okay.
that's just the online name. I'm not used to anyone calling me that at all.
It's weird, like, obviously my net online is Arathorn because I used to do a lot of Lord of the Rings stuff. And as a result, there are hundreds of people in the world who just non-ironically call me Arathorn or Ara. And like some of them have like married friends of mine, and like I know them in real life. They're based in London. I see them and they say, "Oh, hi, Ara, how's it going?" Really weird. Anyway, and we've also got a half shot.
Yes, who is only called Half-Shot. There isn't even a person called Will or anywhere.
Yeah, precisely. Talking of people with
Even I live
bizarre
at home,
identity crises.
Yeah,
Your
great.
parents don't call you half shot, do they?
The only people who don't. And in fact, it started to
Oh.
change because of Matrix now. And they
Oh,
talk to
really?
me more in Matrix than they do in real life. So
Anyway,
Yeah.
welcome, Eric. Obviously, the big news this week is Gitter joining the Matrix ecosystem, and Eric now coming and working at Element, funded to work on Gitter, and for that matter, Matrix and Element in the longer term. We should be careful not to bounce the camera too much. That's
Yes, elbows off.
elbows
Yep.
off. And yeah, how's it going, Eric?
It's going good. I'm just trying to get familiar with Matrix stuff and the protocols. I went through some of the bridging stuff last night, but it's all new to me.
And you're not too traumatized by the whole Matrix ecosystem community.
Not yet. I was kind of confused by like what's R0 and like C3PID and stuff like that, but
Yes.
maybe I'll learn more
We like
here.
our buzzwords.
Yeah, there is a lot of assumed knowledge there, which hopefully the spec is going to fix, but well, should make clear. But it's possible it was written by people with a lot of assumed knowledge. Although we should mention that we've got the tech writer Will, not to be confused with nobody who isn't called Will here,
Yeah.
starting on Monday. So hopefully we'll be able to make some progress there. But tell us about your amazing Gitter logo in the background, Eric.
I made it many years ago with my dad. It's supposed to light up right now. The LEDs or the power supply or something is broken on it,
No.
but I have a new plan for it with much simpler electronics going behind it. So hopefully it'll be lit up in future Matrix Lives.
And was it doing was it a build status light or was it free form disco lights or
I mean, there was grand plans of that, but it was mainly just a warm white light that I like to have as a lamp, basically a fancy lamp in my apartment.
that is awesome. I've always been very jealous of the Getter logo, which is cool. As opposed to the done in an emergency the night before TechCrunch when we launched Matrix Matrix logo that we've ended up with for the last 6 years. So basically, for this Matrix Live, was originally meant to be a general chat with Eric and talking about how Gitter works and our plans of how we're going to bring Gitter natively into the Matrix ecosystem.
Yep.
But I've had a really busy day, and we're recording this at like 5:30, and these us two have to shoot off to things rapidly, and we have a problem, which is that we wanted to have the big kickoff meeting of basically how do we get Gitter into Matrix as soon as possible. And so far this week, Eric, I guess you've basically been doing transition stuff, making sure that everything gets moved over from GitLab over to Element and all that sort of thing. And we
Yeah.
haven't really got to the fun stuff.
Yeah.
So we thought, or I thought more accurately, that an amazing idea would be to basically give up on a normal Matrix Live, and we could just do our kickoff meeting right now, legitimately live for the first time.
What could go wrong?
What can go wrong to discuss how practically we're going to build this bridge? Because the whole reason for Gitter joining, or for Element acquiring Gitter, is basically to make sure that we integrate Gitter as well as can ever be imagined into Matrix. This should be the poster child project for how do you take an existing chat system and correctly expose it natively into Matrix. And we want to do it as publicly and transparently and openly as we possibly can. What better way than to have the kickoff meeting on video on Matrix Live? Right?
Can all be traced back to here. Yes.
So, friendly audience, you were here when this began, and so hopefully you can look back in a couple of hours, days, weeks, months, however long it takes, and see how well our grand plans actually come to fruition.
We're going to look back at this one day and go,
Yeah, that'll be fine. We're making history, everybody. No pressure. First of all, I guess the things that we do know is that we want to run a home server for Gitter.im and kill off the old bridge.
Yep.
Which is a shame because it's served relatively well.
Yeah,
Been a bit unloved.
the British team's done their best to maintain it over the years, but frankly, I think we've got a better system here.
I think it might be one of the most positive reactions to the news that Gitter was joining Matrix is that Matrix bot would die on Gitter.
Yeah.
And so a lot of
Oh, no.
people seem to reach out saying, "Oh my God, at last that wretched thing will go," and
Yeah.
anything else is positive.
A number of times I've messaged Eric to say, can you unban the bot because someone's reported it as abusive.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, us three have basically been working together for about 2 years already at this point, with a number of issues that Halfshot has filed against Eric, saying, "Please, can you unban us?" And then me occasionally popping up and saying, "You know, it'd be really cool would be if Gitter spoke Matrix natively." And Eric, in his defense, would say, "Yeah, actually, that does sound kind of interesting, but that's not really on our roadmap, and you sound like a crazy person." Anyway, so we have a home server. Tell us about Gitter's architecture server side, Eric. What are we plugging into here?
So it's basically all Node.js, like JavaScript, Node.js on the back end, JavaScript on the front end. And there's some separate services like Mongo for the database, Elasticsearch for making things faster, and Redis for caching stuff and notifications. But in terms of Matrix integration and getting that like hooked up would be JavaScript and maybe some API calls to poke at some stuff.
And there's Redis in there too?
Yep, Redis for caching, and that's how we handle like notifications. Like a message comes in, it goes in there. There's like a weird matrix, to use the word, of notifications. Like, oh, message goes here, and then the cron comes later and picks it up and sends off your notifications.
Cool. And so is there any storage happening in Redis, or is it just being used as a routing pub sub thing?
Yep, I recently had to upgrade it. So there's like persistent, there's the phase stuff, which is the real-time client layer of Redis, and non-persist, which is the caching stuff.
Cool. And how many node servers are there, or is it just one monolithic chunk of node?
There's 8 of them, and each one has 2 node processes on it for like the web app, and WebSockets is separate as well.
Okay, so hang on. So there are 8 instances, like shards, across the platform, and each one's got 2 different code bases, or is it like?
It's one code base, but we split the web app into like API and client side sort of routes, and the Bayou WebSockets sort of one. So we have 8 servers, and we run the web app sort of side of things and the WebSocket side of things on each one of them.
Very cool.
Just
and I
load
seem to
balance
remember
out.
there was a really cool mechanism over the WebSockets for synchronizing the data around. Is it Bayou or?
Yep, it's like Fay, Bayou, Halley. Like there's multiple layers that we've kind of introduced, but it's not layers. I guess it's more that same thing, just different name.
Okay, but what is it? Is it a transport of how you encapsulate the updates over the WebSocket, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a way to kind of standardize how you communicate over WebSockets, and I think it also defines like how you reconnect and kind of be more stable over that connection.
Very cool. Okay, so I guess that gives us an idea of what we're playing with. So one thing we were thinking about then, from a bridge perspective, is obviously what language and what architecture we should be doing, because bridge-wise, we've got the old Matrix app service bridge node library, which is built on the Matrix JS SDK, which is the first ever the first ever Matrix SDK, I think, other than possibly the Perl 5.1.
Yeah, if we don't count that. But there's had quite a few updates to it since the bridge library's had quite a few changes over the years, and we've actually got it to do encryption and things like that. So it's fairly stable and well maintained these days.
And that's what the IRC bridge and the Slack bridge and the Discord bridge and the old Gitter bridge.
Yeah, they all run on top of it, and they all seem to work pretty well. So it's a good choice.
Well, what other options do we have?
So you have the Travis library, of course, the Matrix bot SDK, which does app services. It's a very similar design.
Okay, I had no idea that you could do bridgey stuff with that.
Yeah, it's what we use for, well, Soronomi's bridges use that.
Oh, okay.
So it's actually a nicer option if you want to do very lean bridges. So if you don't want the extra bits like encryption or room upgrades and really simple, I just want an app service, it's actually quite good for that. It does all the intent stuff. Those are two JavaScript ones I'm aware of. And then obviously you've got the Go stuff as well, and various things like that.
Right. So yeah, what's the situation on Go?
So Maltrix is the only one which is Chile's library. He uses that for his Telegram bridge, or was it? No, Signal bridge, and the WhatsApp bridge uses that one.
Right.
But as far as I'm aware, we don't have a matched or compatible library for app services yet. So
I thought that we had a. I know what I'm thinking of. There is a Skunkworks project, which we're not talking about yet, which is a new bridge written in Go. Remember that one?
Oh, that one. Yes, that bridge.
Anyway, I think it probably makes most sense to stick with the one which is used most in production and is getting all of the love recently, particularly as Halfshot says on IRC and Slack. And it's good news that it's Node, so it's going to fit in well with the Gitter side of things. But I guess the next question then is, so you've got your home server, let's assume it's a synapse, could be a dendrite, or
could be anything,
you can't do it, or a construct or anything,
and
it's going to be talking to the bridge. Is the bridge then going to talk another API into the existing Gitter code base, or is it going to somehow be assimilated into the Gitter node code base?
Working with it last night, it seemed like it could be directly into the servers, and that way we'd have a much easier time accessing messages when they come in, and there's no like sort of webhook or like separate real-time connection trying to bridge these two that could fail, and it makes it much more direct and easier to deploy.
Yeah, so the thing is, your sharding is the thing that slightly worries me. Is you've got 8 shards, and typically we've done 1 shard for a bridge. So you might realize this already. And somehow we've got to somehow spit, one bridge incoming matrix message into one of these shards and move it around. And then also the other way, we're going to have, any one of these 8 nodes could have a message from Gitter, and that's got to ping itself back. I mean, this is all quite doable, but it's interesting how we do a multi-shard bridge, I guess, to fit that in.
Well, I guess the obvious question is, how do you shard across your 8 hosts today?
I was thinking about that because I was like, there's the events bridge that every time Mongo puts something in the op log, it kind of sends an event and we're able to do other things with that message. And I was like, how does it not duplicate the work there? So I need to look into it more, but I do know that we have certain servers tagged in AWS. So like this is the primary one, and it probably does something like that. I think definitely, I know notification wise, it's like, this is the notification web app server, and we don't duplicate work across other ones that way.
Gotcha. So it sounds as if we might be able to get away with a single bridge instance, or at least attached to one of the Gitter servers. But because there's an event bus connecting everything together anyway, it can then fan out across the other 8 or the other 7 nodes or something.
Yeah.
So when you say adding it directly into the server, are you thinking of adding, or basically having a dependency on the app service bridge npm library in there, and then basically have the server just expose the HTTP APIs that the home server will be hitting?
I was thinking of that, but I'm not sure what exactly. I just didn't try it yesterday. I'm not sure what's behind all of that package and what's running in the background.
Okay.
So I have to investigate.
Hello, I maintain this stuff for 2 years. So basically all the library really is, it's a HTTP listener which listens for incoming messages from the app, from the home server, and it talks to the JS SDK, so basically just sends requests out. And all it's really backing it, I guess, is a node HTTP server at the end of the day.
But for persistence?
Yeah. For persistence, it's basically left open to you can either use what we call AnyDB, which is a sort of on-disk Mongo implementation.
It's horrible, don't
it's
use
horrible.
it.
Please
Especially
don't.
if you've already got Mongo, there would be no point.
We've also got support for things like basically implementing your own data store. We have loads of implementations of like a Postgres data store you can also use for this sort of thing. We sort of leave it quite freeform. Either you can use the built-in horrible one, or you can sort of implement your own and just give it to the bridge and say, here's my data store, here's my interface, go do it. For IRC bridge, obviously, because it's quite heavy traffic, we use Postgres, and it's beautiful, it works really nicely. But
if we're literally pulling the library into the existing code base, surely it's a no-brainer to chuck in the Mongo.
Yeah, you could basically implement all the ATB stuff as actual Mongo and just do that very quickly. That might be the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Just again, operationally, otherwise you're going to have a Postgres. Well, on the flip side, technically you have a Postgres around anyway for the home server.
Yeah.
But what we were thinking of doing is to just use an off-the-shelf home server from EMS, the Element Matrix Service Hosting, and the last thing the EMS team is going to want is for people randomly poking into RDS where Postgres lives there from a totally different bit of the world. So yeah, I think it definitely is going to make more sense to put the storage into Mongo. So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, hey, what would be the best possible example of how we can do this integration? Because it's basically an education exercise, right? We want to be able to go to Slack and say, hello, Stuart, if you're watching this, or Cal, for that matter, if you're watching this. Please answer my emails, by the way. And why don't, if you look at what we did with Gitter, then you can do precisely the same thing with Slack.
Yeah.
But the problem is that I bet that they don't want to run a random Synapse home server. And less facetiously, when we talk to the Mattermost guys or the Rocket Chat guys or the Zulip guys and say, yeah, to get Zulip to talk Matrix, all you have to do is to run a home server next to it. They obviously go, really? We've already got a server. Why do we want your horrible pile of Python and Postgres sitting next to our beautiful bunch of Python and Postgres or whatever Zulip has written in? So, and it's a legit point. And I think the nicest way we could do it for those guys would be if we could just say, here is a magic matrix federation library that you can depend on, implemented in Node or implemented in Python or whatever, and it will, put in messages there and get messages out there, and it will federate and it will be magic. And it would completely abstract away the hassle of running a home server and managing the matrix data store.
The magic sort of like you'd say, here are my users, here are my channels, here are my things, and make these things federate, and you have a really simple interface. So it's sort of a very common interface of these are simple things your chat service has, and can you make these federate to matrix?
Well, it would almost be the same as the matrix app service bridge abstractions that we have today, except you get an entire home server for it. So I was doing this thought experiment and realized that for the peer-to-peer matrix stuff, and this is probably new on your side, Eric, we've got the ability to take the next generation of home servers like Dendrite, and the Conduit guys are doing this too in Rust, and like compile it down to WebAssembly or to actual native code, but then put wrappers around it in order to get at it from JavaScript. So you literally could potentially not just import an AS library like the Matrix App Service Bridge, but you could actually import an entire home server, and I don't know, it might use SQLite under the hood to persist whatever it needs to persist. But from, if you were, say, the Rocket Chat server, which is, I think, written also in TypeScript and Node, it could just be something you depend on and magically pulls it in. And I was wondering, hey, perhaps we should demonstrate that model with Gitter, because in practice, that's what people would be most useful for the Mattermosts and Rocket Chats.
Yes.
The only problem being that it's total science fiction. And whilst Dendrite is entering beta next week, but it's still not at 100% test coverage. I mean, it's going to be good enough for people to install and play with, but it's not going to be reliable. It's certainly not going to be reliable for a service as large as Gitter with how many...
We've found that people implementing their own home servers tend to find little federation bugs, and I think rather than trying to dog food Gitter on, a new federation implementation, it's probably better to stick with Synapse, which we know, works probably, even though we love to do sci-fi.
What do you think, Eric? Is there any temptation to go and try depending on an entire home server inside Gitter?
I mean, Go sounds fun, and I did a little bit, so I'm excited about that side of things. But on the Gitter side, I'm really a fan of the stable, because I'm the one working on the Gitter stuff and maintaining it, and I'm like, I can't handle when it's like, crashing, and I'm like, diving into myself is no fun.
You should definitely see the bridge team's roadmap, things like that for stable. We have a lot of things which could be determined unstable.
Yeah. So I honestly, I think I sympathise an awful lot with that, and I think that we can have a pretty robust thing. Synapse being run by EMS should just work. It will be using the same kind of footprint as Mozilla and I don't know, KDE and GNOME, and whilst there have been some performance problems there, we've got to the bottom of it these days. And then plain old app service, which is integrating tightly into Gitter. Sounds cute, honestly, from a performance perspective. And no need to worry about debugging stack traces from Go in native code bubbling up into Node or whatever horrible thing. But I hope we get to do that at some point because it's a complete sticking point. Now, I was talking to Tim Abbott, I guess my counterpart at Zulip, except he still seems to write all of Zulip. This guy is amazing. You ever encountered him?
I haven't.
The guy.
Yeah, he's like the CEO, CTO hybrid of Zulip, the company, but he also writes about 3/4 of Zulip, full stop. It's like scary person. I mean, luckily I don't write that much stuff, and the stuff I do write isn't much good.
You keep him away from it most of the time.
Precisely. Anyway, I was talking to him about it, and I think he was basically saying, hey, if there was a nice way to integrate into Matrix, then why wouldn't we? So
That's the end goal for bridges, really, isn't it? At the end of the day, is to make them actually federate and stop being tied to home servers, I think.
yeah, but for a Zulip style use case, it's contingent on this sci-fi, please let's just have a library that makes it happen work. And I don't know, it's going to be a really interesting side effect of the peer-to-peer stuff. Perhaps the conduit guys, Rust people, if you're listening, go and build this magical library so that we don't have to. So what else do we need to figure out? What about ghost users or virtual users? How easy is it going to be to masquerade all of the denizens of Matrix into Gitter?
I was thinking about some of the details, and I was thinking of constraining them all to like at least one OAuth client, just because if something goes wrong, I don't want it affecting everything and going crazy. So we could revoke.
Trust the Matrix community not to
Well,
have bizarre traffic patterns into Gitter.
Oh, yes.
I'm also thinking of other people who want to use this feature in the future. So it's just making it more safe that way. And then also, I think in terms of virtual users, we can add on to the chat message schema and just say like, oh, you can define the username, you can define the avatar, and maybe have some metadata. So like we can make it a bit more fancy and not just like directly, but you can link off to the Matrix profile and stuff like that.
You could do matrix.foo links and Gitter and say, here's your matrix entity. That'd be beautiful, I think, just to see.
Or even Matrix URLs. You see the Kitsune,
Yes.
who you probably haven't met yet, Eric, but is one of the Matrix Spore team. That's wrong. Core spec team. Spec core team, that's the word I was looking for. And he has been working on this official URI MSC for a while. And we got as far as registering the URI with IANA, so matrix : / is an official URI scheme. And I think he was calling for final call for comments on his MSC for what these things look like. So where we're going, we might have proper native matrix URIs rather than crappy matrix.2 shorteners, which Gitter could adopt, and that would be lovely.
Yeah, it sounds super perfect.
What other things do we need to figure out?
Virtual bans, apparently. Virtual bans, Eric?
Oh, yeah.
I think so. I think that sounds good. That way we don't have to ban the Matrix bot user. We can just ban the individual virtual user that's causing problems.
But who will have to file tickets on GitLab?
We'll have to talk about other things.
Part of my job, yeah.
But I think since we have some of that metadata, like, oh, type matrix and here's your external ID, like we can pinpoint people that way instead of just by their user ID in terms of Gitter. I mean, of course, there'll be some adapting, but that seems doable to me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking over these other things.
I guess one thing to talk about possibly briefly is fallbacks for things that Gitter doesn't have yet. Might be worth just saying. Do we have any plans for reactions or anything like that? Or sort of just...
Yeah, why doesn't Gitter have reactions?
Just bandwidth sort of thing. I mean, they're a pretty popular requested feature. But I think a lot of those type of features that are expanding, we wanted to do after threaded discussions got in, which was our kind of big feature that landed more recently. So it would be like it was on our roadmap, but it was just a more future thing that we wanted to tackle.
In other words, the total mirror image of us, where threading has now been punted. Can you remember working on threading in 2016?
My very first thing I did at this doing swim lanes. Do you remember we had to sit in a whiteboard and draw swim lanes?
I went and reviewed your swim lane MSc last weekend. I went through the entire thing. So literally, the first thing he did when he pitched up as a first year student doing GSOC with us, we went and did the unforgivable and kidnapped the GSOC students. Actually, brought them into the office, or them being him, into the office, and decided to design threading. And that was
It's amazing. I still hear, to be honest, after that frightening discussion about something.
On the plus side, it's actually pretty good. So I forget what the MSc number is, but it basically defines how you would do freeform multi-tree threading in matrix. And having designed it, we thought, it looks good. And here we are, 4 years later. We've got reactions, and we've got edits, and we've got end-to-end encryption, and it's on by default. We sure as hell don't have threads still.
It's really funny when for reactions they were threading, just made the trade-off, and then Gitter did the opposite thing for okay, let's do
Precisely. It's literally a mirror image. It's complementary, one might say.
Yeah, we were seeing a lot of Q&A sort of stuff, so we wanted to make those threads more connected and just make people able to communicate when rooms get busy.
Yeah, I think one of the things we did was to add replies as a quick fix about 2 years ago, and that solved that problem 60%, which was then enough to take the pressure off proper threading like you guys have.
So the other benefit to threading, obviously, is all the existing bridges we have, which do, reply threading, where Slack does threading and we do replies to sort of bridge that across. If we got threading as part of Gitter, then the other bridges get an immediate upgrade into actual threading land, which is always good too. So I have invested in business.
I'm trying to think of how we would bridge reactions into Gitter. And since we have threads, we could possibly put a thread reply at the first one, or just add a reply with the reaction in there, although it's kind of cumbersome.
Yeah, I think it could be really cumbersome. I mean, there are so many reactions in Matrix that I think it would totally dilute the threading if they just filled up with emoji. Personally, I would just ditch them for now.
So for the RSC bridge had the same problem, right? Where we need to think of how we do, reactions in the RSC bridge, and we decided just to discard them because how do you make people not unhappy with that? So
even I was thinking maybe +1s might be useful because people acknowledge things, and at least some of them could be good in context.
Yeah, you are right. The people do increasingly use them semantically. Like in the last couple of weeks, I've noticed in the core team, people have been using green chat boxes, like literally the green chat box emoji, rather than a thumbs up, if they literally want to indicate that they have done the thing that they were asked to do.
Yes, so for when we do PR reviews in EMS land, we actually just send green ticks so we've done it, as well as ticking it on GitHub, because we don't have a way to bridge in that we've done something through GitHub yet. So it's quite useful as a feature, I guess.
It's almost like all bridging sucks and we should just give up and go home, because it's always an impedance mismatch. There's always going to be something like this which doesn't translate. What else can we do with... Okay, you've got edits, haven't you?
Yeah, that could work.
We just edit? Can we cheat and fake it completely by making it look as if the original user edited their message with the reactions that other people have added in?
I'm trying to think. It could work for matrix messages that come in, but I'm not sure we want to edit everyone's message that hasn't kind of agreed to that.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, I guess that's a little bit evil.
I mean, worst
it's
case,
also
cheat that feature in somehow to get it.
Yeah, well, I think we need to be a little bit disciplined not to accidentally go and add end-to-end encryption to Gitter or something, which would be cool, but might end up diluting our effort a bit more than it needs to be.
Yeah.
I mean, how much are people screaming for reactions? Is it culturally that people have got by without them?
Let me see. I'm gonna sort by popular.
Oh, you've got a history.
You're going to say 3,500 upvotes.
I think it's maybe 60 or something.
Pretty high. I think our most upvoted issues are about 100.
I guess it's 12 with a lot of the discussion, probably because a lot of it's definitely a lot because it's from GitHub previously, and there wasn't reaction in previous, and now there's a bunch of +1s comments in our issues, so definitely a lot.
Something to consider. We should probably move on because we've got about 2 minutes.
Yeah, we've got 2 minutes left, but haven't we done most of it? What
Importing
else?
history, maybe? You want to talk about that?
Importing. I wrote an MSc for importing history called MSc 2716, and we're not going to do it at first because Eric wisely pointed out that for it not to suck, it needs to be able to do it retrospectively anyway.
Yeah.
So we might as well do it entirely retrospectively and get going without it. Thank you for being a voice of common sense, Eric.
Just making it more simple, just so we can get it out there and improve later.
Simple, minimum viable, definitely sounds nice.
Yeah. Encryption, we're not going to do yet. Encryption something for the future, maybe, but we're not sure. We're not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is that your encrypted matrix app service bridge shenanigans could presumably just magically decrypt the E2E DMs or whatever, or E2E private rooms for bridging into Gitter. So it should be easy to add on.
Yeah, I'm going to plug that briefly and say it just works. You stick Pantaleon on the side of the bridge, it will start decrypting things magically, do nothing to make it work.
But to start with, let's just do the public rooms. And if people can't DM through to Matrix at first, I assume that's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I think public rooms is the big feature that would help a lot of people.
Yeah.
What else is there?
We want to bridge it. So the other thing is we have lots of Gitter rooms on the Motion Network already bridged in. At some point, we'd like to make it so that they sort of become part of this new thing, and you're no longer talking to the old bridge, you're talking to the new bridge. So without having to make people join a new room, their existing rooms will continue to work, which would be nice.
We have screwed this up monumentally when we've done this before. Like KDE complained, no, GNOME complained for ages that their IRC bridging was horrible, and it was because they had their own server, but the bridge ran on the matrix.org server. So matrix.org was overloaded, the IRC bridge was sometimes overloaded on matrix.org. Their server was fine, but you still had to have like this 3-4-way hop in order to get the traffic over. So we said, "Alright guys, we want you to be happy. What we'll do is to give you your own IRC bridge." And so we gave them their own dedicated one.
Oh, this was KDE, I think. It was
I think it's happened with both of them. Hasn't it?
No, they have because they're using their own network, so it's okay.
No, we did the same thing. GimpNet moved from matrix.org over to gnome.org.
Yeah, I think.
And we had the same nightmare that we had lots of rooms bridged with the old bridge, and now we've got a new bridge, and we're trying to migrate over, and now all the rooms are double bridged, and we've got IRC people talking to IRC people via Matrix, and Matrix people talking to Matrix people via IRC.
Yes, the Freedom one is definitely sucky. Thankfully, the GNOME one is only one GNOME bridge, so it's thankfully not double bridging. But
well, it was still a mess.
Still a mess doing it.
Basically, we could end up. I guess we can turn off the old bridge. But we still do not want to end up with hundreds of old Gitter users on a dead bridge who we can't get rid of because the bridge is gone and it's just a mess. So this time, please, let's get it right, because the unhappiness from KDE and GNOME after we've screwed it up for both of them is palpable to this day.
Luckily, we have the entire Matrix and Gitter team with us today, so we'll be okay to do it.
I'm just trying to get a public testimony that we're not going to screw up the migration from the old bridge to the new one.
Yeah, we promise to do our best.
Is it possible just to like delete the old rooms and redirect to our new ones? And because we have the history in
No, because the most common thing, I think, for the Gitter bridge on Matrix is that people plummet into their existing rooms. So they're not just using Matrix to portal into Gitter. They already have a community on Matrix and a community on Slack and somewhere on IRC. And then there's the guys on Gitter, and they it all together. So you can't just blitz the existing room because it would impact the existing ones.
No,
instead, we basically need to do a very managed shutdown of the old one, where, heaven forbid, parts its users before we knife it in the back. And then the new one needs to come in with the same mapping.
I suspect for the portal rooms, we could at least do a room upgrade trick where we just basically port into the new room.
Portal is fine. It's the plumbed one, so that went horribly wrong for KDE and GNOME. And it turns out there are many more of them, particularly for Gitter, because of how people kind of add it on afterwards when they discover that there are a bunch of lost users in Gitter. We are out of time, unfortunately. I've got to go home. Halfshot's got a date with a pub.
And Eric's looking very upset that I'm not at the pub yet.
Yeah, and we've got two Erics now. This isn't going to get confusing. And Eric, you said you've got a call. I think we got through most of it.
Yeah, I think so.
You feeling good, Eric? Do you have stuff? Are you going to be able to hack on this?
Yep, I'm going to continue on my tiny bridge project and like get more familiar.
Hey, he's built a bridge already. It's amazing.
Cool. Well, go and lean on Halfshot as hard as you can at a distance of however many thousand miles.
Yeah.
And good luck and welcome to Matrix. And thank you for being such a good sport in terms of trying to make this successful. And we promise on the Element and the Matrix side to look after Gitter as best we possibly can and keep it up and running and better than ever. And let's see where we go from here.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Eric.
Bye.
Bye.